The old Charleston house felt heavy with humidity and secrets. I stood in the shadowed hallway, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. My flight from a supposed geological survey in Dubai had landed 3 hours ago. My siblings, Sarah and Mark, thought I was still on the other side of the world, unreachable. I'd come to surprise our mother. Instead, the surprise was mine. Their voices drifted from Dad's study, sharp and greedy. "It's simple," Sarah said, her voice a venomous whisper. "We tell the lawyer we can't reach him. The connection is unstable. By the time Liam gets a clear signal, Dad's estate is settled, split 2 ways, not 3. A cold fire ignited in my chest. They didn't know I was home. They didn't know I heard everything. My own sister, Sarah. The one I'd helped through her messy divorce, financially and emotionally. She always had a sharp, acquisitive glint in her eye, but I'd always dismissed it as simple ambition. Now, I saw it for what it was. Pure avarice. Then, Mark's voice, a weak counterpoint. "What if he finds out, Sarah?" The same spinelessness that defined the 3 failed startups I'd bankrolled. "He won't," Sarah snapped, her voice like cracking ice. "He's too busy playing with rocks in some godforsaken desert. Besides, he trusts us." That last part was the real dagger. Trust. I had, implicitly. My work with my company, Stratum Global, took me away for long stretches, but I thought we were the 3 Carter Musketeers, an unbreakable unit. I saw now that I was just the overseas bank account, the reliable older brother they could finally cash out. They weren't my siblings anymore. They were the opposition. And the game they just started was one I intended to win. I quietly pulled out my phone, pressing record on the voice memo app. Let them talk. I leaned against the cool plaster, the phone a block of ice in my hand. The recording was a tiny, pulsing red light, a new, secret heartbeat in the silent house. My father used to call us his 3-legged stool. He'd say, "One leg goes, you all fall down." It was his favorite analogy for family, for unity. A folksy Charleston lie I'd built my life around. I'd been the sturdy leg, the one driven into the ground, holding everything up. Sarah's divorce. I didn't just offer emotional support. I paid her legal team, a shark tank of attorneys that cost more than my first condo. I covered her mortgage for a year, so she and her kids wouldn't be displaced. Not alone. A gift, 'cause that's what the sturdy leg does. And Mark. My God, Mark. His life was a graveyard of get-rich-quick schemes, each one dumber than the last. There was Vape-Away, the artisanal vape juice company that went up in smoke when regulations changed. I'd sunk $50,000 into that. Then came Aquapups, a luxury dog-walking service that used paddleboards. That fiasco cost me another $75,000, not including the liability insurance for when a client's Pomeranian fell into the Ashley River. I'd write the checks, listen to his frantic promises of, "This is the one, bro," and then watch it all dissolve. I did it because he was my brother. Because the stool needed all 3 legs. Now listening to them plot, I realized they hadn't seen a brother. They'd seen an ATM. An absentee guardian whose only function was to fund their lives while he was off playing with rocks. That phrase stung. My work with Stratum Global, the company I built from nothing, was a source of immense pride for my father. He understood the grit it took. He'd been a builder, a man who respected things made of sweat and substance. He'd look at my geological maps and see the same hard-won success he saw in a perfectly framed house. My siblings saw my work as an inconvenience, a lucky break that made me unavailable to see their true nature. The irony was suffocating. My success, the very thing they resented and relied on, had given me the resources and the strategic mind to dismantle them. They thought I was a geologist. They were about to find out I specialized in controlled demolitions. Sarah's voice cut through my thoughts again, confident and final. "The lawyers' meeting is Friday. We signed the papers, it's done. Mom's too out of it to question anything, and by the time Liam's back, he'll be facing our lawyer, not us. I stopped the recording, a grim smile touching my lips. They had a plan, but they were playing checkers in a sandbox. I was about to introduce them to three-dimensional chess, played on a global scale. They thought I was out of reach. I was closer than they could ever imagine. I slipped out the back door, the recording a hot weight in my pocket. The old house, my childhood home, now felt like enemy territory. I checked into the Dewberry, a sleek modern hotel downtown. It was anonymous, sterile, perfect. My command center. From the window I could see the spire of St. Michael's, a landmark of a life I no longer recognized. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Tried calling again. Guess the connection's still bad. Call when you can. We miss you. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. They weren't just lying to a lawyer, they were performing for an audience of one, crafting a digital alibi. My first move was to test the terrain. Dad's old friend, an estate lawyer, Arthur Abernathy. I used an app to add a faint layer of static to my call, making it sound like a satellite link struggling for life. Mr. Abernathy, Liam Carter here. I began, my voice intentionally strained. Signal's terrible out here in the desert. Just wanted to check in. Abernathy sounded overly sympathetic. Liam, we've been trying. Sarah and Mark are terribly concerned. They said you were completely unreachable. I know. Is everything okay with Dad's estate? I let a wave of static crackle over the line. They mentioned a meeting on Friday. Is that something I need to worry about? Not at all, my boy, he said, his voice a little too smooth, a little too rehearsed. Just some preliminary paperwork. Your siblings are authorized to act on your behalf given the communication issues. We'll get it all sorted. He didn't ask for a video call. He didn't suggest an email with documents. He just accepted it. He was either incompetent or complicit. In my book, they were the same thing. The hardest part was next, Mom. They'd moved her into a high-end assisted living facility after Dad passed. I'd paid the 5-figure deposit and the first 6 months. I bypassed the front desk, using a service entrance I'd scouted online, a fire exit near the kitchens. Her room was at the end of a quiet hall. I found her sitting by the window, staring at a manicured lawn. She wasn't out of it, as Sarah had claimed. She was sedated. A glass of water sat just beyond her reach, and her eyes, when they focused on me, were cloudy but filled with a desperate, lucid fear. Liam? She whispered, her voice a dry rasp. They told me you weren't coming. I knelt by her chair, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I'm here, Mom. I moved the water closer, and she drank, her hand trembling as it held mine. Sarah brings the papers, she murmured, her thoughts drifting in the chemical fog. Says they're for my care. I'm supposed to sign on Friday. They weren't just cutting me out. They were manipulating our grieving, vulnerable mother into signing away her own financial security, likely into an account they controlled. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was about elder abuse. It was about cruelty. Back in the sterile quiet of my hotel room, the rage was clean, sharp, and focused. They weren't just thieves. They were predators, circling the two people they should have protected. The recording on my phone felt insufficient. This required more than just exposure. It required dismantling. I pulled up the contact for Julian Vance, Stratum Global's chief counsel, a man who'd once liquidated a rival firm in Qatar so quietly, they didn't know they were bankrupt until their office keycards stopped working. He answered on the first ring. Julian, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. Change of plans. I'm not in Dubai. I'm in Charleston. I need you to start digging. Sarah Carter, Mark Carter. I want to know about every dollar, every debt, every secret. I'm initiating a hostile takeover of my own family. There was no shock in Julian's voice, no judgment, only the cool, quiet hum of a predator locking onto a target. Understood, Liam, he said. Hostile takeover. Consider me engaged. I'll need 12 hours for a preliminary asset and liability workup. Go dark. I'll be in touch. He hung up. That was it. No wasted words. It was the most comforting sound I'd heard all day. The rage that had been a wildfire in my chest condensed into a single, cold point of light. The game was afoot. My own performance came next. I had to maintain the illusion of the unreachable brother. I waited an hour, then dialed Sarah's number, once again using the app to degrade the signal quality. She picked up on the first ring, her voice a symphony of fake relief. "Liam! Oh, thank goodness! We were getting so worried. Is everything all right?" "Sarah," I said, letting my voice crackle with manufactured static. Signal's finally holding. For a minute, anyway. "I got your text. What's going on? You sounded urgent." I was baiting her, dangling the worm of my own feigned ignorance. "Oh, it's nothing, really," she said, the lie rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. "Just lawyer stuff. You know how complicated Dad's paperwork is. We have a meeting on Friday to get things rolling, but with you being, well, there, we didn't want you to worry. We'll handle everything on this end." "We've got it covered, bro," Mark chimed in from the background, his voice a little too loud, a little too shaky. "You'll handle it?" I asked, letting a beat of silence hang in the air, heavy with static. "You sure? I can try and get a flight back if it's important." "No!" Sarah's response was too fast, too sharp. She quickly softened her tone. "I mean, don't be silly. That would cost a fortune. This is what family is for. We'll take care of Mom. We'll take care of the estate. You just focus on your work. We trust you, and you can trust us." Nosh, trust, trust. There was that word again. The dagger she so enjoyed twisting. "Okay, Sarah," I said, my voice a mask of weary gratitude. "If you're sure. I trust you guys completely. Just keep me in the loop when you can." I ended the call and stared at the silent phone. The calm was absolute. There was no anger, no pain. There was only the chilling, profound emptiness of knowing the people you loved most were strangers. My phone buzzed, a single, sharp vibration. It was a secure email from Julian, arriving hours ahead of schedule. The subject line was one word: NIME. Leverage. The body of the email was brief. A single attachment. A loan agreement. It was for Mark. He owed $250,000 to a private lender known only as Silas Thorne. The final payment was due this Monday. The collateral listed was his 1/3 future share of the Carter family estate. They weren't just trying to get rich. They were desperate. And Silas Thorne. The name sounded like a villain from a cheap paperback, but the $250,000 debt was brutally real. It hung there on my screen, a digital manacle shackling my brother to a man I'd never met. This wasn't just about greed anymore. It was about desperation. Mark had gambled away his future, and Sarah was willing to burn down our family to bail him out. The Friday meeting wasn't a cash grab. It was a rescue mission, and I was the casualty they'd chosen to sacrifice. Julian's file was lean but lethal. Silas Thorne wasn't a leg breaker in a tracksuit. He was a private credit specialist, a predator who wore a suit and tie. His hunting ground was the Sovereign, a members-only club tucked away on a cobblestone alley off King Street. It was a place where old Charleston money and new, shadowy capital mixed over whiskey and quiet, ruinous handshakes. I knew the type. I'd dealt with them in Jakarta and Lagos. They respected only one thing: a bigger predator. I gave Julian new instructions: liquidate a specific portfolio of my tech stocks. I wanted $300,000 in cash delivered to my hotel in a nondescript briefcase within 3 hours. There was no question, only a confirmation email that arrived 60 seconds later. While I waited, I traded my travel-worn clothes for a dark, custom-tailored suit I kept in Charleston for business meetings. It was my armor. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see Liam Carter, the geologist. I saw the CEO of Stratum Global, a man who had negotiated with warlords and dismantled corrupt multinational partnerships, a man my siblings had never met. The sovereign smelled of old leather and cigar smoke. It was dark, hushed, and oozing with the kind of power that doesn't need to raise its voice. I bypassed the host, my gaze scanning the room until I found him. Thorne was exactly as Julian's file had described. Mid-50s, immaculate silver hair, holding a glass of amber liquid like it was a scepter. He was listening to some city councilman, a look of predatory boredom on his face. I walked straight to his table. The councilman stammered to a halt as I approached. I didn't look at him. My eyes were locked on Thorne. "Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice low and even, "I need a moment of your time. It concerns Mark Carter." Thorne's eyes, the color of a winter sky, narrowed. He gave a curt nod to the councilman, who scurried away like a frightened mouse. Thorne gestured to the empty chair. "You're not Mark," he stated, his voice a gravelly murmur. "I'm his brother, Liam," I said, sitting down. I didn't offer a hand. I placed the slim leather briefcase on the table between us, and Mark's problems are now my business. A thin, humorless smile touched his lips. "Is he finally paying up? Because the deadline is Monday, and I don't grant extensions." "I'm not here to ask for one," I said, snapping open the latches on the briefcase. I turned it so he could see the neatly stacked bundles of cash inside. "I'm here to buy the debt, in full." He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the money. The mask of sophistication slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing the raw avarice beneath. "The principal is $250, he said, his voice tight. "I'm aware," I replied, pushing the briefcase an inch closer. "I'm offering you $300,000. That's your principal, plus a $50,000 premium, a fee for your time, your discretion, and for the immediate transfer of the original promissory note, signed over to me." He leaned back, studying me. The gears were turning. He was trying to calculate the angle, to find the catch. Men like Thorne didn't believe in simple transactions. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why not just pay it off?" "Let's just say I prefer to hold my own family's debt," I said, my voice dropping a little, taking on a harder edge. "It allows for a more personal repayment plan." That, he understood. The smile that returned to his face was one of professional respect. He was looking at me now not as a desperate family member, but as a fellow player, maybe even a bigger one. "You have the note with you?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "A man in my line of work keeps important documents close." He reached into his breast pocket and produced a folded piece of paper. It was creased, worn. It was Mark's signature on the bottom, a pathetic, loopy scrawl, my brother's entire future, condensed onto a single sheet of paper. "The money is yours," I said, pushing the briefcase fully across the table. "In exchange for that note, and your complete and total amnesia regarding Mark Carter and this conversation. As of this moment, he no longer owes you a dime. He owes me." Thorne picked up the note, took a pen from his pocket and scribbled on the back, "Paid in full, transferred to Liam Carter." He signed it with a flourish and pushed it across the table to me. He didn't even count the money. He just closed the briefcase, stood up, and gave me a curt, almost imperceptible nod. "Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Carter," he said, and then he was gone, melting back into the shadows of the club. I folded the promissory note and placed it in my own pocket. It felt heavier than the briefcase, full of cash. It was the linchpin, the key. Sarah thought she was playing chess, moving her pawns to corner a king she thought was on the other side of the board. She had no idea I'd just bought the loyalty of her most powerful piece. As I walked out into the humid Charleston night, the city lights seemed sharper, the air clearer. The rage was gone, replaced by a glacial calm. Mark would walk into that lawyer's office on Friday, arrogant and secure, ready to sign away my inheritance to save himself. He'd be acting on Sarah's plan, thinking he was about to get away with the ultimate betrayal. He wouldn't know that the man he owed everything to wasn't some back-alley loan shark. It was me. And I was coming to collect. Friday morning arrived, thick and humid. Arthur Abernathy's office was a shrine to old Charleston, all dark mahogany and the faint, sweet smell of decaying paper. It felt like a tomb. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat in the cafe across the street, watching my siblings walk in. Sarah was a picture of poised confidence in a crisp linen dress. Mark was practically bouncing on the balls of his feet, a nervous energy radiating off him. They looked like two people about to win the lottery. They had no idea they were walking into their own eulogy. I gave them 5 minutes to get comfortable, to let the sweet taste of victory settle on their tongues. Then, I crossed the street, pushed open the heavy oak door, and walked in. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" "Liam Carter," I said calmly. "I believe my family is expecting me." I didn't wait for an answer. I walked down the hall and opened the door to Abernathy's conference room. The three of them were seated around a large polished table, a sheaf of paper spread out before them. The pen was in Sarah's hand. The silence was absolute, punctuated only by the soft click of the door latching behind me. Abernathy's jaw went slack. Mark looked like he'd seen a ghost, his face turning a pasty white. Sarah dropped the pen. It clattered on the tabletop, a sound like a gunshot in the dead quiet room. "Liam," she breathed, her voice a strangled whisper. "What? How?" "The connection must have improved," I said, pulling out a chair and sitting down at the head of the table. I looked at the documents. "Preliminary paperwork, is it? Just to get things rolling." Abernathy, recovering slightly, started to bluster. "Liam, my boy, this is a surprise. We thought you were unreachable. Your siblings were simply trying to—" "To what, Arthur?" I cut him off, my voice dangerously soft. "To act on my behalf? To make sure things were handled?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I have to admit, the satellite signal in Dubai can be tricky, but the reception in the hallway of my father's house? Crystal clear. I pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the room, sharp and venomous. Asterisk. "Tell the lawyer we can't reach him. By the time Liam gets a clear signal, Dad's estate is settled. Split 2 ways, not 3. Then Mark's pathetic whine. Asterisk. What if he finds out, Sarah? And Sarah's final damning words. Asterisk. He's too busy playing with rocks. Besides, he trusts us. I let the recording play out, the silence afterwards pressing down on them. Sarah stared at the phone as if it were a coiled snake. Mark couldn't meet my eyes. He was studying the wood grain of the table with the intensity of a dying man. Abernathy was sweating, dabbing at his forehead with a handkerchief. He knew he was caught. "So," I said into the suffocating quiet, "let's talk about what happens now." I turned my gaze to Mark. "You look stressed, Mark. Money problems?" He flinched. Sarah shot him a warning look. "No need to be shy." I continued, reaching into my suit jacket. I pulled out a single, folded piece of paper and slid it across the table to him. "I believe this belongs to you." He unfolded it with trembling hands. It was the promissory note. He stared at my signature on the back, the words transferred to Liam Carter burning up at him. His breath hitched. He finally understood. "Silas Thorne sends his regards," I said coolly. He was very accommodating. "It seems your plan to pay him back on Monday using my share of Dad's money has hit a slight snag, namely, that I now own you." Sarah finally found her voice, a high, reedy sound. "You can't do this." "I can," I said, my voice like steel. "And I have. Here are the new terms. The estate will not be split. It will be placed into a trust, managed by me. You will get an allowance, Mark, just enough to live on. The rest will go directly toward paying back the $250,000 you owe me, with interest." I turned to Sarah. "And you, Your free ride is over. The days of calling your big brother to bail you out of your bad decisions are finished. You'll have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I trust you'll find it educational." Finally, I looked at Abernathy. "And you, Arthur, you are going to draw up the paperwork for this new trust. You are going to do it today, and it will be flawless. Because I also have a recording of our phone call, where you assured me my interests were being protected while actively helping them steal from me. Your license to practice law now exists at my discretion. Do you understand?" He nodded, a puppet with its strings cut. "There's one more thing," I added, my voice cutting through the thick silence. "My mother, you said she was out of it. She wasn't. She was sedated. I saw her yesterday." She was afraid. That was the final turn of the screw. Sarah's face, already a mask of fury and disbelief, crumpled. The last of her self-righteous indignation evaporated, leaving only the ugly truth exposed. Mark let out a choked sob. Even Abernathy, clicking away at his keyboard, flinched. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a deeper, more monstrous betrayal. "You enjoy this, don't you?" Sarah whispered, her voice a ragged tear in the silence. "Playing God. Dad would be ashamed of what you've become." I leaned forward, my hands flat on the polished table. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice low, intense, and carrying the weight of every check I'd ever written for them. "Dad would be ashamed of *U. He built things. He respected work. He didn't raise his children to be parasites, preying on their own mother with a pen and a lie." The words struck her like a physical blow. The fight drained from her, replaced by a hollow, gaping emptiness. She finally saw herself through my eyes, through our father's eyes, and the image shattered her. I felt no triumph, just a profound, aching sadness. Dad's 3-legged stool was broken beyond repair. I hadn't just exposed them. I had been forced to amputate them. The family I flew home to surprise was a fiction. It died in this room, and I was the one signing the death certificate. I stood up, the chairs scraping softly against the floor. I didn't look at them again. They were ghosts, haunting the ruins of their own greed. "Arthur," I said, my gaze fixed on the door, "you have my number. Send me the draft of the trust by 5-page M. Then, you will call my mother's facility and inform them that all decisions regarding her care and finances, every meal, every medication, every visitor, now come exclusively through me." I walked out without a backward glance, leaving them to drown in the silence they had so carefully constructed. The victory felt less like a conquest and more like a salvage operation. Necessary, precise, and leaving nothing behind but the wreckage of what we once were. If you were her and you just overheard everything, what would you do? Would you walk in and confront them right then and there? Or would you keep your presence a secret and plan your revenge?